once you see a question under performance management, the first thing you need to do is to go to the requirements, check what they say you should do, right? So once you read the requirements, ask yourself, which topic is this? Is it marginal costing? Is it activity-based costing or other topics, right? That is the question. Now, after you ask yourself such question, you will now still ask yourself that what are the steps you will use in solving this question, right? And that is very what? That is very important. As much as possible, we've been able to bring out steps when we are solving a marginal costing, activity-based costing, as well as cost estimation, right? Now, let's quickly go to the requirement of this question, then before we start the main question. Where is it? Okay, this is the question. Okay. Now, we have here required, excuse me, required. Calculate the unit cost of each product using traditional costs. Using prior product cost approach. That is traditional what? Traditional cost. Right? That is what? Traditional what? Traditional cost. Right? Okay. That is traditional approach. The next one is you need to determine the unit cost as well using what? Activity-based costing, right? Then what is the B? The B says that compute the expected sales for the three products and the profit or loss that will arise from the implementation of the activity-based costing approach and the traditional costing. So which means that we need to determine the profit or loss. So definitely sales is given in this question. So we need to remove our sales from our cost so that we get the profit, right? C, state the reason why activity-based costing approach may be preferred to traditional absorption costing approach in modern manufacturing environment. Now, class. So we will now, once they mention unit cost, right? And they did not specify that, oh, we should determine just the overhead for traditional approach. They say unit cost, right? You just do the full cost. If they say unit cost, right? We can say, oh, we can do unit cost of traditional cost. We'll look at it as well as what? Activity-based costing. Unit cost means cost per one. Cost per one. Don't forget that when you want to use traditional cost, is like your overhead, unit cost of the overhead. The activity-based costing will like the unit cost of the overhead, right? And that is 10 marks. Now, let's quickly read the question quickly so that we can move. Okay. Sedeco Nigeria Limited manufactures and sells three products. Class. Three what? Three products. Alpha, beta, and gamma. Right? They manufacture three products, alpha, beta, gamma. For some time now, the company has been concerned about its cost allocation system, right? It has been concerned about the cost allocation system and has been searching for a more efficient way of cost allocation. Now, they have been having a problem with cost allocation and has been searching for a way of for a more efficient way of cost allocation. Now, the company recently employed a management accountant who informed the management. You could be the management accountant, right? A follow-on could be the management accountant that will now say, oh, that activity-based costing is a more efficient cost allocation. When you want to allocate cost, you could use activity-based costing because it's more efficient, which will also lead to improvement in cost accuracy and what? And reduction. I can disagree with that part because costing is expensive though, right? Now, the management accountant discovered that the company has direct materials, You can see them. You can see direct material, direct labor, and 5 indirect cost pool. You can see they even mention it. 5 indirect cost pools. These are your indirect costs, and they are called what? Cost pools. They are overhead costs. Indirect costs are overhead costs, and they are called what? Cost pools. You can see. Now, which represent the 5 activity areas. The prior product costing system uses the 2 direct cost categories and a single indirect cost pool, where overhead are allocated using direct labor. Class, who can tell me this prior product costing system that the company is using? The prior product costing system. Unmute your mic.
Absorption costing.
Absorption
Thank you.
costing.
Thank you so much. God bless you. God bless you. You are following. God bless you. Now, this is absorption costing. You can see that it is based on direct labor hours. You can see that it is stated clearly that it is based on what? Direct labor hours. Now, the following information, you can see alpha, beta, gamma. You can see the total given to you in the question, right? Total is given to you in the question, right? You can see that total is given to you in the question. Now, if this is established, you can see the production and sales, the direct materials, which is unit cost of the direct materials, you can see. Now, this direct labor hours, this is 10 hours per unit. This, when you have something like this in a question, and they did not even indicate that, oh, this is hours per unit, so you can see it was not indicated, but you should know that when you have figures like this, right, when you have numbers like this, right, it is 10 naira per unit, 10 hours per unit, which means that they will use 10 hours to produce 1 unit. All right, this is 8 hours per unit, which means that they will use 8 hours to produce 1 unit. How many units did they produce? We will get there, right? They will use this 4. They will use 4 hours to produce. How many units did they produce? We will get there. And this is the total. You can see that they did not even indicate itself. This is the total hours. Instead of them to say, oh, this is total hours. That is why they didn't put naira sign, right? That is why naira sign was not what? Was not included. It is the total hours, class. Now, another thing is, Taufik.
Sorry, I
Taufik.
can't see your screen again.
Is your
I
network?
can't see your screen.
I guess it's your network. Please confirm if you can see my screen.
We can see your screen, sir.
Okay, it's your network. Please check your network. You can log out and log in. Now, machine hours, you can see machine hours, right? And they absorb their overhead on the basis of direct labor hours. Prior to that, they absorb their overhead on the basis of what? Direct labor hours. Prior to what? To that. Now, this 5 means that 5 hours per unit. Now, if they use 5 hours to produce 1 unit, how many hours did they use to produce 20,000 units? We'll get there. Class, are we following? You can see the logic, right? Are we still together, class? Are we still together? Hello, are we still together? Good. Now, you can see machine hours is what? 6 hours per unit, right? 6 hours per unit. Although it is not stated, but you should know that this is hours. 6 hours per unit. The question is, if they use 6 hours to produce 1 unit, how many hours will they use to produce 12,500 units? We'll get there. And so on and so forth. And this is what? This is the total hours. Now you can see the drivers, the numbers of production runs. You can see that it changes based on the unit that it actually changes. It's different from each other. You can see that this one is 15, 25, 120, right? Now, you can see that the paid direct labor is paid 10 naira per hour. 10 naira per hour means that how many hours will you use to produce 1 unit? Now, let's say direct labor. Where is labor? 10. Class 10. You use 10 hours to produce 1 unit. So definitely we'll pay you 10 naira per hour. 10 naira per what? Per hour. We will get there. Class, are we together? You can see the way we are matching them. Direct labor hour. Check your direct labor hour. Check the amount paid allocated to direct labor hours, right? I'm just trying to do some analysis so that you get it, right? Now, excuse me. You can see your overhead cost. You can see the overhead cost, right? Your overhead cost. You can see the overhead cost. You can see all these costs here, all these costs here are your cost pool, right? Then you can see your setup. You can see that setup is allocated. The cost pool is allocated to cost driver. You can see based on production runs. Machine is based on machine hours. Goods inward is based on what? Component receipts, right? Component what? Component receipt, and so on and so forth. So, and that is the analysis for that. Now, in the other part, also the company is considering the pricing of the three products. So they want to consider the pricing. Because sales price have remained uncertain, they are not certain of the sales. So definitely probability will involve. That is why you see probability. When they are not certain of a particular sales, probability will involve. Now, look at it. For alpha, you can see there is probability that they will sell at 2,000 naira, and there is probability they will sell at 2,000. So, see, in any question, in any question given to you, and you see probability attached to either sales or cost, calculate expected value. If it is cost, calculate expected cost. If it is sales, calculate expected sales. If it is what again? Calculate the expected value of that item. I repeat, when you see a probability in a question attached to either sales or cost, what they say you should do is to calculate expected cost or expected sales. In this question now, we have to determine expected sales for alpha. So how will you determine expected sales? You multiply 0.6 times 2,000, you get the figure 0.3 times 2,200, 0.1 times 2,300. So addition of these three will give you what? Expected sales. We will get there. So I'm just analyzing the question. So now calculate. So we are to determine the unit cost using traditional approach. Class, suggested solution. Let me put that immediately after this. Suggested solution. Class, it is very important I analyze that question like that, right? So that when you want to do more questions, you can be able to analyze it. Suggested solution. Solution. A. AI, right? Not AI. Oh. Is it AI? Okay. Oh. AI, right? Traditional approach. Now, this is not ABC. This is traditional approach, right, class? Now, if you want to determine what you want to do is your overhead unit cost. Class, it is your overhead unit cost that you want to do. Since they just mentioned unit cost, it is your traditional approach is your overhead. Then you want to determine the unit cost of that overhead. But if the question says it is full cost, it means that when you determine your unit cost of the overhead, you need to add your variable cost that will make it full cost. Remember that your overhead plus your variable cost will give you your what? Full cost. Class, are we still together? Are we still together? So, thank you. So if that is established, right, we will now say for you to use traditional approach, don't forget is your OAR. You need to calculate. Don't go and write OAR in exam. Write overhead absorption rate. Write it in full. Equals to, what is the formula, class? What is the formula for calculating OAR? What is the formula, class?
Budgeted fixed cost over budgeted activity level.
Okay, budgeted overhead or budgeted fixed cost, right? Budgeted overhead. Is this overhead correct? Overhead, right? divided by budgeted activity. But this activity is mentioned. It is prior costing, which is what? The direct labor. Don't forget that it is actually mentioned in the question, right? That it is what? Direct labor. So your activity will be budgeted level of activity. So you now indicate budgeted labor hours. You can just indicate that it is budgeted what? Labor hour, because the basis is there, right? Budgeted labor hours, right? Budgeted labor hours. Now, your OAR equals to, now you go and check what is the total, Vivian, Vivian.
That's why. Can you hear me, sir? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Sorry to cut you, sir. So I have a question. You know, we said that the formula for OAR is budgeted overhead over budgeted activity, right? But you said now in this question, the activity has been given, which is the labor hour, right?
Yes.
Okay, so is there or will there be a situation where we will not be giving the budgeted activity like how it was stated here, like the
Did
activities
you?
labor?
Okay, thank you. So have
So
you watched, thank you. Have you watched the videos on lectures on activity-based cost, what is it called? Absorption costing. Have you watched it?
no.
You've not. That's why. I can see. That's why. There are different bases of absorption. There is labor hours. Manufacturing firm could use labor hours, could be machine hours, could be unit produced, could be percentage of, it will be stated in the question that there are different bases of what? Absorption of overhead. Please, I will advise you immediately after this class, right? You can watch the video on absorption costing so that you will know that, oh, there are different bases of absorption. It could be labor hours, it could be machine hours, it could be percentage of prime cost, or direct what? Material. Vivian, are we still together?
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Now, your budgeted overhead. Now, let's quickly go back to our question. Now, you can see this is your overhead cost, right? This is your what? This is your overhead cost. And the total is what? 17 million. That is your budgeted overhead. That is your overhead cost. Is what? 17 million. So you put it there as what? As 17 million. So we can have 17 million, right? Sorry. 17 million divided by the budgeted labor hours. Now, in this question now, you can see that under the total, there is hours here. That is why they didn't put naira sign in front. It is your total labor hours. It is what? Total labor hours. Now, in a situation, because at Next Gen Professional Associates, we give you the worst case scenario. We'll tell you the worst case scenario that will happen. Now, in a situation whereby this total of 320 hours is not given to you in the question, what will you do? Because you need to get the budgeted what? Labor hours. What will you do? Now, I will give you alternative to that. If the total column is not given, because you need to get the budgeted labor hours, right? And it is already given in the question, right? I will give you alternative. Let's say we have 320, for instance. Now, that one is settled. Now, alternative, assuming there is no total here, you want to get, excuse me, and you want to get the direct labor hours total. Now, what you need to do is that, just like the way I've been explaining, I analyze the question. What you need to do is that if alpha, hmm, don't forget that there are 3 units here. Don't forget there are 3 units, and they bring a water bill. Now, you want to share it. Absorption costing will now add everybody's own together, and divide it by the numbers of units. Now, we assume that this is 3 units, Absorption costing will now accumulate. We add everything together. That is why you have budgeted overhead over budgeted levels of activity, right? Now, this 10 hours per unit, class, if you are to produce 1 unit, you will use 10 hours to produce 1 unit. Now, how many units did you produce? 20. So which means that how many hours did you use to produce that 20? It is what? 10 times what? 20. We give you the numbers of hours you use in producing 20,000 units. You move on. You say plus, we'll do that. 8 hours per unit. How many hours did you use to produce 1 unit? You use 8 hours, which is this. Now, if you use 8 hours to produce 1 unit and you produce 12,500 units, how many hours did you use? 8 hours per unit times 12,500 will give you the total numbers of hours, right? Plus 4 hours per unit. You use 4 hours to produce 1 unit. You produce 5,000 units. So how many hours will you now use to produce 5,000 units? 4 times what? 5. Class, are we getting the gist? Class, are we getting the gist? Because performance management is just like gist. We'll put it that way. Interesting. So, and that is all we'll do. So, we'll do that is the worst case scenario. Hmm? Or I will not even put it. Just do it like that in your notes. Or let me put it out. So 320, the worst case scenario when this is not given. When this 320 here is not given. So that is what you will use. That is the techniques you will use. That is the approach you will use. Right? That is the worst case scenario. Now, anyway, let's continue. So if this is 3, we'll use that one too as well. 320 hours. Please, calculator. What? Press your calculator. What is the OAR? What is your OAR, class? What is your OAR? Or
It give you 5.5 point something. You come
3.125.
is this how we call figure in performance management class now? Hey, I will just write 3
no
points.
no
53.125.
53.125.
Is it how we call figure? That is how we've been calling our figures, right? Okay. Oh. Who can give me how do we call that figure? So you just put it at 53 and you move on. That's actually
3
what.
naira.
Okay.
3 naira per hour.
Thank you so much. God bless you.
15 naira 1 kobo.
53 naira 53 naira per
1 kobo.
okay, let's just leave that one. 53 hours 53 naira per hour. Always put it right. 53 naira per hour. Right? Now the alternative approach. The alternative is when the total is not given, right? So we can say OAR equals to the 17 million. So you'll be giving me figure now divided by, so the first one is please screenshot this part. Please screenshot it quickly. Have you done that? You give me the 10 hours. They use 10 hours for the first one. They produce 20,000 units. So the second one, they use this. So you'll be giving me figure so that we can. Have you done that? Please confirm. Are we good?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Let me just let me screen. Okay. Now the first one is better, right? So better use 10 hours per. Let me put it this way: 10 hours HR per unit, so that you will understand, right? Times how many units did they produce? 20,000, right? someone should just be giving me the figure, please.
Yes.
How many? 20,000, 20,000, right?
20,000.
Okay,
Yes.
20,000. So that means that when you multiply plus, where is your plus? So which means that when you multiply 10 hours per unit times 20 units, we give you the total numbers of hours that you use in producing 20 hours. Class, please take note of all these things. It's very important, right? You can see when you multiply 10 hours per unit times the 20 units, we give you the total numbers of hours that you use in producing 20 units, right? Because 10 hours, 10 hours per unit, we goes with the units, right? Produce, right? Now, how many hours did they use to produce one unit? Better, what is the next one?
8 hours. Eight
Thank you.
hours.
Thank you, 8 hours. I love that. That is how we roll in PM class, right? 8 hours. I love that. 8 hours per unit. So times what?
12,500.
12,500 units. Unit, please. It is not 12,500 units, right? So when you multiply it, 8 hours per unit times 12,500 units will give you the total numbers of hours used in producing 12,000 hours, right? 12,000 units, 12,500 units plus how many
4 units
hours?
per hour.
Okay, thank you.
4 hour
4
per unit.
hours per unit. 4 hours per unit times how many units did they produce? How
5,000
many?
units.
Okay, 5,000 units. 5,000 units, right? Right? So when you do this, you have your 320 hours. But when the total is given to you, don't stress yourself and start doing all those things, right? Although you still need it, but don't stress yourself and just move on. It will still give you the same thing, right? We can test from that, right? So per hour. So and that is how it works. It work, right? So and if this is established, class, this is like a unit cost, right? For the overhead, which is what? 53 naira, 53 naira per hour. And that is the unit cost, right? Now, the next thing you need to do is that this is the unit cost. You can decide to get the total overhead, but you can decide to get the total overhead cost, right? You can decide to get the total overhead cost, but we will get there, right? When we want to determine the what, the profit, when we want to determine the profit, because we will need, because this one is just like, this is now what they will charge to their production as their OAR. That is what they will charge to that particular production. This is what they will charge to their overhead, 53 naira per hour. And they absorb their overhead on the basis of what? Labor hours, right? On the basis of what? Labor hours. And this is the what? This is the unit cost, right? So we move on, we move on. This is determination of unit costs, right? Determination of unit what? Determination. There are two approaches to this though, but doesn't matter. Let's move on. So determination of what? Unit cost. And this is the first one. So the second one is a Roman figure 2, right? Right? When you have the activity-based costing. The what? The activity-based costing. Now, this is the activity-based costing now. Activity becoming activity-based costing. But activity-based costing. Now, let me quickly do something. Before I move to activity-based costing, let's quickly see, let's charge this 53 naira per hour. You know, is their overhead. This is what you will charge to their overhead, right? Let's quickly charge this to their overhead. Let's know their overhead cost, right? Don't forget that the question just say unit cost. But let's get the overhead cost. Let's charge this 53 naira per hour to their overhead. Don't forget that it is based on labor hours, right? So the first one is it gamma, beta? Is it okay? Alpha, right? Alpha, alpha, right? Now, alpha overhead costs, overhead costs. Because we want to charge it to overhead to know, is this spelling correct? Overhead. Okay. Now we want to charge this 53 naira per hour to the what? To their overhead. We want to know the overhead cost. Using, don't forget that it is based on labor hours. Now, what is the total numbers of hours that they use to produce these 20,000 units, class? Because that is the basis of absorption on the basis of labor hours. So we need to get, because this 53 naira is per hour. How many hours did they use to produce that unit, right? How many hours did they use to produce that unit? Now, this is the first one is alpha. How many hours did they use? You can see that you can say 10 hours plus 10 hours per unit times 20 units. What do you have? How many hours? So we can have 53 naira
200,000.
per unit times 200,000
200,000.
hours, right? 200,000 hours. Is that not so? So what is the overhead cost? You can see what activity-based costing charge to production. It's charging on the basis of labor hours. And we have examined that. What is the total hours? Right? Are we together? Are we together? The next one
Yes.
is after alpha is what? Is beta. Right? Beta. We just want to know the overhead cost. Right? Of course, we will still use it as we move on. Unit times. So what is the what is the numbers of hours that they use to produce? This is it, that they use to produce 12,500 hours. Please multiply what you have.
100,000
100,000
hours.
hours.
100,000 hours. 100,000 what? Hours. Right? So how much are we paying? I use per unit, is all per hour. You guys did not correct me. Hour. This place is supposed to be hour, not units. You did not divide it by units now. It's hours. So 53 naira per hour. So the next one is what? The next one is what? After beta, the next one is gamma. Right?
Gamma.
Gamma.
Thank you. And this is and this is what activity-based cost traditional approach does, right? It charges the cost to their overhead. It absorbs the cost to their overhead. It does not want to know the cost of these factors that causes changes in their overhead cost. It doesn't, right? Just like someone who bring the NEPA bill now, right? Doesn't want to know how many units you consume. Come on, let's share it equally. Class, what is the next one? 4 hours per unit times 5,000 per unit, 5,000 units. Class, what do you have?
20,000
20,000
units.
hours. 20,000 hours. 20,000 hours. Right? So class, what is the first overhead cost for this? What is the overhead cost so that we can move to activity-based costing? Class, what is the overhead cost? This is the
10
total
million
cost.
600,000 naira.
What do we have?
10,600,000 naira.
10,600,000 naira. Next. What do you have next? What do you
5
have
million
next?
300,000 naira.
5 million
300,000 naira.
300,000. God bless you. God bless you. Now your wife, Abi, now your husband, you go marry. Abi. So next. 20,000.
1,000,000 naira.
What do you have?
1,060,000 naira.
1,060,000 naira. Okay, are we good now? So this is the overhead cost. And this is what activity-based costing is trying to say. No, this is the unit cost that they say you should calculate to 53 naira per hour. And that is the what? And that is the unit cost, right? Precious.
Okay, sir. Please, I want to be cleared on these hours. You have 53 naira per hour and 200,000 hours. So I want to get it clear here on the 200,000 hours, like why you're calling it hours. I was thinking it should be unit.
Precious, precious. It is 10 hours per unit. Hmm? 10 hours. You will use 10 hours, precious, to produce one unit, right? You will use 10 hours to produce what? One unit. How many units did you produce? 20,000 units. 10 hours times 20,000 units. We give you the total numbers of hours that you use in producing 20,000 units.
Okay,
Do you
sir.
get that?
Okay, sir. Thank
Do you,
you.
do, do,
Yes, sir.
do you?
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Now, if this is established, you can see this is the cost. The question says just the unit cost. Is that not so? Now, we will now move to where? To the activity based costing. Now, what is our steps in calculating activity based costing? First thing for you is to know the activity level, right? You should know the activity level. You can see them here, the cost drivers, and you can see what the numbers of production runs, right? Based on the numbers of production runs, you can see machine hours is based on machine hours. Goods inward is we have identified that. Now the next thing for you is to determine your OAR. Utility based costing also have OAR. That is, you want to know the cost, your overhead cost that you will charge to a particular production unit. Don't forget that just like the same way traditional method did its own, but activity-based costing, after getting the OAR, it will now allocate the cost to each of the cost driver. Don't forget that a cost driver is a cost that causes changes in the what will make your level of activities, what will make your overhead cost change is your cost driver class. Now, the first thing we already know the activity, right? We already know the activity, but let's calculate our what? OAR now, right? So the first thing you need to do, right, is to determine your OAR for ABC. So now, don't forget that you have cost pool, right? You have your what? You have your cost pool, which is this. You can see your cost pool here. This is your cost pool, and this is your cost drivers, right? And this is your what? Your cost driver. Now, you will not say, your cost pool is in cost, and your cost driver is like a numbers, right? You will not say, oh, cost pool divided by the cost driver. You will not get the OAR that you will charge to each of the cost driver. Now, this is what I'm saying. So you will not say cost pool, which is the cost, right? Divided by the cost what? The cost driver, right? So we now pick it one after the other. We start. This is the first thing we need to do. You identify the activity, you calculate the cost that you will charge to each of the cost driver, just like the way you did traditional approach. You need to determine that unit cost. So once you know that unit cost, that you will not charge that unit cost to each of the cost driver. Don't forget that the cost driver are all these the numbers of production runs, the numbers of inspection, the number. So that is what activity-based costing came into existence to correct absorption costing, that we need to know the cost of inspection. We need to know the cost, and that is what we want to do. Now, the first thing we need to pick, right? Let's quickly go and pick it. Cost pool. Quickly. So what is our cost pool? We have setup, right? Can you see it? setup, right? You can see that setup is based on production runs, which means that the cost of the setup for the three products, class, the cost for the setup for the three products is 1,400,000. That is the cost. Cool. The production runs, you check the drivers, right? Now, you can see that you come back to this place, you can see that numbers of production runs. You can see numbers of production runs. Can you see it? 5, 10, 25. Now, sometimes I won't say they may be so wicked or not, right? Because that is how it is, as well as in ACCA. See, when you get to this part, when you get to this part, you can see it clearly. When you add 5 plus 10 plus 25, shey you supposed to have 40. Is that not so? Is it 40? Class, is it 40? Yes, it's 40. Now, sometimes when you add these three together, it will not give you 40. Class, please pay attention to this because I will tell you the worst case scenario. Sometimes when you add 5 plus 10 plus 25, you may not have 40. This is what you need to do. Just pick the 40. That is what you need. You just need your cost pool divided by the cost driver. And the cost driver are the numbers of production runs, the numbers of components, the numbers of all these things are your cost drivers, right? Just pick the total and move on. If you add these three, class, and you did not get 40, don't go and set exam for yourself. Just pick, because it's just the total that you need. Pick the total and move on so that you will now allocate it to each of the cost driver and do what? And move on, class. Now, since 40 is given, but I will still add 5 plus 10 plus 25, right? I will still add 5 plus 10 plus 25. Leslie Bombs.
Hello, sir.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Okay, you said about this production run, the 40. That if what they give to us does not sum up to 40, we should move on with the 40 and
The
allocate.
total.
Is it that the total? Is it that when we get the 40, when we get the 40 and divide it with the total cost pool, we should divide it by 3 again and allocate and share it for the 3 of them?
No, don't worry. You will see how we will do it. It's not like that. You will see how, they've already given you that they use 5 now. So why you don't need to
Okay.
even divide it. You just multiply it by each of this thing.
Okay.
You get
That
there.
means we multiply the total answer by
Don't
the
worry.
individual.
Yeah, individual.
Okay.
We'll get there.
Okay, sir.
Now that is what activity-based costing came in to replace absorption costing. Class, are we together? So let's quickly. We have some minutes more. Okay. So please screenshot this. So screenshot. Okay, it's 40. Let's just move on with 40, please. I'm just giving you the worst case scenario. Please, if you sum up and it did not give you the 40, please just pick the total and move on. Right? But if the total is not given, you can add everything. You need to add everything together. Please, you need to add everything together, right? So that you get your total numbers of production runs, class. Now, since 40 is given, let's move on with that, right? So there's no need for us to add it again. You can do that at your leisure time. Setup, right? Setup, class. So what is the cost? What is the cost of setup? What is the cost? Uh, you guys did not
14,000.
screenshot it.
14,000.
1.4. Please screenshot
1.4.
this part. Screenshot it. Are you there? Have you screenshot it? Let's see how we can quickly move, please. Are we good?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good, good. So you just be giving me figure, then we'll move on, please. So setup, right? Now is 1,400,000 divided by the 40 given to you. You can see that this is what activity-based costing want to do. Activity-based costing want to know the cost, the total cost when you bring a bill now, class, when you bring a bill now of 30,000 for 3 units, when you divide it, you will now multiply it by each of the consumption, right, of each of the flats. Class, are we together? Of the what? Of each of the flats. You bring 50,000, you divide it by 3. Fine. You will now multiply it by the consumption of each of the flat. And that is what the activity-based costing is doing. Please give me a figure. What is the figure for this?
35,000.
135,000, 135,000 per what? Per setup, right? Per setup. Thank you. Per setup. Now the next thing we need to do, what is the next? What is the next drivers? What is the next activity? So the next cost is machine.
Machine.
You can see is machine, and it's based on what? Machine hours. So now let's scroll up. Let's see. Let's go up. Let's
Excuse
go up.
me, sir.
Yeah. I'm
It's
with you.
35,000, not 135.
Okay. 35. Okay. No problem. I will change it. I'll correct it. Thank you. So machine, right? What is the cost? 9 million divided by what is the machine hours? No, now you come back to machine hours. Now you can see that the total is given to you, right? If you still want to show your skill, you can say this is 5 hours per unit. Is that not so? You will use 5 hours to produce 1 unit. How many units did you produce? 5 times 20. You will use 6 hours to produce 1 unit. How many units did you produce? 12,500. 6 times 12,500 will give you the total numbers of hours you use to produce 12,500 units. The same thing, you now add all the hours together, you will see that you will have 200. But in a situation, that is the worst case scenario, whereby the total is not given. You need to do that. You need to do what? You need to do that. Because we are lucky in this question that total is given already. So we move on with the 200 hours, right? In some question, you have to multiply your 5 hours per unit times the unit produced plus your hours per unit times the unit produced plus your hours per unit times the unit produced. Addition and everything will give you the total hours used. Class. That is the worst case. That is the worst case scenario, right? So now we move on. 200 hours. 200 hours, right? 200 hours. So then that is machine, right? Machine, right? So and the machine is 9 million divided by 200 hours. I will correct the other ones. 200 hours. 200 hours. Right? We see, like what Leslie Bombs just mentioned. So you can see that this setup, and this is what we will charge to each of the products. And now we will now ask you, how many setup did you do? Oh, you did 5 setup. We will now say 35,000 naira per setup. Which means that one setup is 35,000. We will now say, oh, 35,000 times the numbers of setup that you did. That is your cost. We will go to the second product. We will say, how many setup did you do? Oh, you did 10 setup. We will now say, oh, 10 times 35,000. And that is what activity-based costing came into existence to do. Is that not so? And that is what people supposed to adopt. You give me bill of 20,000, divide it by the numbers of flats, multiply it by each of the consumption. You have your costs, right? Now, we move on to this. So what do we have, class? What do we have? Quickly.
5 naira per machine hour.
5 naira per, God
40,
bless you.
45
Five,
naira
okay, 45 naira
per
per
machine.
machine hour, right? Per machine hour, right? Now, what next? What is the next overhead? What is the next overhead? Quickly.
2,800,000.
Goods inward.
Good inward.
Okay, goes
Who's
inward.
inward?
Thank you. Goes inward. Inward, right? So what is the cost?
2,800,000.
3 million.
2,800,000.
2,800,000. Good. Now, sometimes, now let's go back to the goods inward. On which basis? Let's go back to goods inward. On the component, right? On the component, what? Component receipts. Is that not so? So now let's go back to up, 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 up. Now, this is components, numbers of component receipts, right? It's based on the numbers of component receipts. Class. Now, if you look at it, sometimes, I told you, sometimes when you add all these three together, you may not have 160. Please pick the total. Pick the total and move on, right? It's a trap, right? Don't try to correct the person that said the question because they will ask you, I know. See, there are so many questions like that under activity based costing, right? Now, you just pick the total. Since total is given to us, there's no need of us to add the three. The total is 160, right? So if the total is not given, just add 15 plus 25 plus 120 and you move on, right? So 160, quickly, 160 divided by 160, 160, right? What do we have? 160,
15,000.
what do we have?
1,500. Yeah.
17,
500.
okay,
Per component.
17,500 per, it's based on production
Component.
runs, be components, per component, right?
Component.
Oh my God.
Components, components. Is it component? Right? Is it component?
Component.
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
Okay, components. Okay, 17,500 per component. So do we have any other variables? Do we have any other one?
Yeah.
Packaging, right?
Yeah.
Okay, packaging. Okay, packaging. So let's quickly so we need to stop here. So on Sunday we'll complete this packaging, right? So what is the cost?
2,000,000.
Okay, 2 million. 2 million divided by, so what is
Okay,
the
50.
driver?
50.
Class, what is the driver?
Production
Packaging is based on
order.
production orders and 50 is given as the total, right? As the total, right?
Yeah.
Okay, total. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So when you divide it like this, don't forget what we will still do. We will still multiply it by each of the package or each of the what production runs, right? We still multiply it, but let's get for each first. So what do we have, class? Quickly, what do we have?
1,000 naira per production
Four
order.
4,000,
40.
4,
40,000 naira per.
okay, 43,000.
40, 40.
40.
Okay,
40.
40,000 naira. Thank you. Per production runs, right? Runs, right? So next, 4 minutes. Next, what is the next? What is the last?
Engineering.
Okay, engineering. Thank you. Engineering. Okay, what is the cost?
Besides
One
production,
Is what?
million.
I can hear you. Engineering is what? Okay, it's production
One million
orders.
eight
Okay.
hundred thousand.
Okay, 1,800,000. I will correct it. Don't worry, Sam. I've seen it. Okay. 1,800,000. Right? So this is production orders, right? So in our next class, okay, please divide it. Divided by what?
50.
Okay, 50. Thank you. Divided by 50. Okay, I think we need to go now. What do we have? So just say
36,000.
36,000 naira per
36,000.
production order.
Okay, per production order, right? Production order. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining. And please, if you have paid for the material, please just send me on WhatsApp. I will send you the material, right? So please, if you are here to get your material,